Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome back to the studio. Once more, Tony Balch has joined us from Ashdown Solutions, and this time we're going to do a bit more of a deeper dive into some of the most effective ways that a small business can adopt to just take care of the basics of looking after their own business security. I think that's right, isn't it, Tony?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Jim.
So Tony, last time we spoke about the Cyber Essentials, and that's quite a comprehensive government-backed program for looking after the sort of cyber security of your business. But this time we're going to look at the 6 security essentials for any small business.
Yes, exactly that. Thanks, Jim. Not everybody's ready to do Cyber Essentials and go on that accreditation journey, and that's fine. But what we really want them to do is to have some security in place. So this is the 6 things that we really think they ought to be doing to protect their business.
Yeah, and the 6 are. We got. Let me show this in a rather a wider screen. There you go. So that's the 6. So we've got. Do I talk us through them? Talk us through them a bit, very quickly.
Yeah. So we're going to touch on endpoint protection, as it sounds. Traditionally we call that antivirus. We're going to talk about operating systems and updates, why they're so important, backups, why they're important, endpoint detection and response. We're going to introduce that and say what it is and why it's so essential as a tool. Email protection, because that's where 95% of vulnerabilities seem to originate, and of course two-factor authentication. We're used to that with banks now, and more systems require it. We just want to reiterate why it's so important.
Great, perfect. It would be great. I think it'd be going to be a really helpful discussion for the people who are watching this. So the first thing we're going to look at is email protection. So Tony, what do you mean by email protection?
Email protection. Okay. Spam, phishing, it's everywhere. Spam's a bit of a pain in the backside, and it's a productivity reducing the thing, but it's not a security vulnerability. But the phishing stuff, the compromised email, the email that's trying to trick you into clicking on a link, logging in somewhere, giving away your credentials, they used to be easy to spot. They used to be terrible English, poor graphics, poor layout, all of those things. ChatGPT has fixed a lot of the language and layout issues. They're getting much better at cloning legitimate company details, and so they now have the correct graphics, the correct language, and it just makes them a little bit harder to spot. And why it's important that you have some software scanning your email before it hits your mailbox to try and drag them out, to try and recognise those bad things, and the software will help. But of course, it might be you need some training as well. But some phishing protection software in front of your mailbox is critical these days.
Yeah. Now, phishing is a term a lot of people are familiar with, but there might be some people watching who don't actually have a complete understanding of what the word means.
Okay. The phishing emails, it literally is representing or presenting an email as if it's coming from a legitimate source, and it's trying to steal your details. So it might say, here's Fred's shared a file with you on OneDrive, click here to access the file, and then it will give you a login screen that looks like a Microsoft login screen, at which point you enter your details. What they're trying to do is to get those login details. They don't want to access you and your mailbox immediately from that point of view, but what they can then do is to sit in there. They will come back later. They might use you as a vector to send out more phishing emails. They might sit in your mailbox and have a look at what you do. Very dangerous for small business owners who are receiving and sending invoices. If they've compromised your account, they've managed to log into your mailbox because they've now got your username and password, and they start seeing your emails, and they can say, oh, we're due to pay some invoices. And what they would then do is say, they will then send you a reminder email, say this invoice is overdue and you need to pay it, but we've got a problem with our bank, can you just send the money to this different bank account? But because it's a legitimate email with a valid debt, these are all triggers that will, social engineering triggers that will make you more susceptible. So you're going to go, yeah, I know I owe Fred some money, and I know it's due, and only asking me to pay from another account. If they can get you to just go, oh yeah, valid, I'll just do it, that money's gone. Fred's going to ring you back in a couple of days' time and say, you haven't paid my invoice, and you're going to go, I have. But you haven't. So you still owe Fred the money, and you've lost the money out of your business. And the chances of getting it back are pretty slim because you pushed it.
Yeah. So the bank aren't going to be very sympathetic.
The bank are not going to be very sympathetic.
Yeah. And we all see emails coming in from Amazon saying,
It's everywhere and everything. It would be an Amazon delivery, be it the bank, and these things. We're talking about email, but they do phone calls as well. Oh, it's your Barclays account. They don't know you got a Barclays account. Tomorrow they'll be doing NatWest, and the day after it'll be HSBC. Sending out these phishing emails, it costs them pennies to send millions. And if they send $1 million out and they get one person, and they get an invoice of £20,000 paid, it's a good profit for them.
And also, there's the whole identity fraud thing. So just if they collect lots of little pieces of information about an individual, they can end up cloning a complete identity.
Indeed.
Yeah. Interesting. So email protection. Number one.
Number one. Protection.
Number two, endpoint protection.
Endpoint protection. People might say, "What's endpoint protection?"
What's endpoint protection?
What's endpoint protection? Endpoint protection is what we used to call antivirus.
Right.
So you need to have something on your machine. The job of endpoint protection, be it a free one or a managed one from somebody like us, is to look for known bad applications, known bad things running on your machine. They're not 100%, which is why we'll talk about the next thing, but it's one of those. There are many well-known bad actors and bits of malware out there that are in databases and can easily be blocked with a simple piece of malware, antivirus protection on your machine. So it's a simple thing to do. If you're running Windows, then Windows Defender, if nothing else, it will give you a level of protection. It doesn't give you the managed element, but that might be enough for your business.
And important to make sure it keeps updated.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, definitely. So endpoint protection. Next thing is endpoint detection and response.
Okay.
That sounds quite technical.
Okay, so if endpoint protection is looking for the known bad things, it knows what a piece of virus looks like or a piece of malware looks like, that's easy to block. That's what antivirus does. Endpoint detection and response works in a different way. It doesn't know what a bad program is. It doesn't recognize a bad program by going, it's written by this person, or it's like file size is this, or the hash, the technical measure of a file. But endpoint detection and response looks at what a program does. So the program's downloaded, it's got past the antivirus, it's not recognized as bad. Endpoint detection says, but it's trying to open lots of files. It's calling encryption routines. At which point, endpoint detection can say, well, actually, that's not right. That's outside of what we expect a program to do, and can then a managed endpoint detection will then block that machine from accessing any more files. It will block it from sending anything to the internet, and then send an alert to somebody like us, your IT provider, and tell us that there's something wrong with that machine, and that the software will tell us that what the program is, what it accesses, what it's trying to do. And then we can look at it and go, okay, is that a legitimate program that should be doing that? In which case we can whitelist it and let it carry on. Otherwise we can go into remediation and we can kill that program and roll back the changes it's made. So antivirus is important, but it's not 100%. Endpoint detection is the next thing, building layers of security to try and protect systems.
Right. Yeah, great. So the endpoint protection and endpoint detection and response.
Easy for you to say.
Easy. Right. The next thing is operating systems and application updates.
Okay. So accepting that there are bad actors out there, these guys are looking at vulnerabilities, and they are generally published. There are two types. CVEs is a industry mechanism for recognizing vulnerabilities in software. Now, the problem with those is they're published, the bad boys can see them. But there's also a thing called zero-day exploits. This is where somebody has found a breach in an application or a piece of software, but they haven't yet released a fix for it. So we call it a zero-day because it's out there in the wild. We don't necessarily know who knows about it, but we don't have a fix for it either. So they're really difficult to deal with. So what we want to be doing is making sure that if you're running a Mac PC, it's still vulnerable, it still needs to be updated. Windows PC, Office, Adobe, all of these applications all need to be kept up to date. They need to have the security updates applied as when they're released. Because if a security update has come out, then the bad boys know about it. If you don't patch it, what will happen is they will run their exploit against your machine, and they'll go, right, okay, here's a list of 100 vulnerabilities, and they'll try each one in turn, trying to find the ones you haven't patched. And if you haven't patched an application or an operating system, that will let them in. And at that point, they're away.
So what that says to me is, if you're running an operating system that is behind the curve, so let's say you've got a machine which is slightly out of date,
Yeah.
you can't bring your operating system up to the latest, which means you can't bring your applications up to the latest. That means you've got a security vulnerability.
Indeed.
Inevitably.
And in fact, inside Cyber Essentials does require that all of your systems are current and supported. So if you've got Windows 7 machines on your network, Windows XP, then you won't get Cyber Essentials because you're vulnerable. You won't get cyber insurance or anything like that. We do come across instances where people can't run the latest and greatest, which is fine, because what we will then do is segment their network and isolate it. So it's not sitting looking at the internet, and none of the other machines in the network can be seen or see it.
That's interesting. So if you've got one machine on your network which is not fully up to date, that represents a security vulnerability for the entire network.
Yes, it becomes a launch point. They're in at that point, and then they can run other tools and exploit across the network.
And that's really interesting, because the temptation is to keep running for an application for a use that's not critical to your business. You say, I don't need to have the latest versions of software. I can put up with running a slow machine on an old operating system, and that'll do.
Yes,
but the reality is that's a real risk.
It is a real risk, and we see it a lot. There are, as I say, there are things we can do to mitigate it. I mean, not everybody needs the latest, greatest hardware to run their daily task. It might be you've got some part-timers or whatever. That's fine. What you should be doing is saying, okay, well, we can upgrade machines, or we can put a refurbished machine in. So we can buy an ex-corporate machine that's a couple of years old. It's much cheaper than a new machine that will support the latest and greatest operating systems and patches. Applications gets harder, particularly with people who were used to buying a piece of software and running it until it stopped. People like Adobe Cloud came along and said, actually, all your old software will stop working, or it will get no more security updates and things, to put you onto the SaaS model. With the subscription on a monthly basis. But yeah, these things all need to be kept up to date or isolated if you can't mitigate it in any other way.
So this is a really good reason for going on to a subscription service, which makes sure you do keep updated. Because I do in my world, I come across a lot of business owners who are trying to keep their costs down.
Yes.
And they'll find a free version of something, or an old version of something they can use for nothing. But because it's out of date, that's representing a real vulnerability.
Free's okay, because there are open source alternatives to things like Adobe, some of their products and things. So it might be that you'd be safer running an open source version than an out of date version, unsupported, with vulnerabilities of an old app.
I think when I said free, what I meant was knockoff.
Yes, the knockoff ones. Anything downloaded that's knockoff, you've got to be very careful of. The cracked versions of old perpetual license software. Well, if they've cracked it and modified the code, what else have they done?
Yeah. And now, when the subscription services they're so affordable, I can't see that it's the cost. The cost is the cost of the monthly subscription is way outweighed by the security benefits.
It is, as you say, the productivity advantages from running modern software on decent machines. It more than pays for itself, and running old versions really is a false economy and a security risk.
Yes, that's really interesting. So next thing is two-factor authentication.
Okay, two-factor authentication. We still come across people who say, we don't want two-factor authentication, it's too difficult. It's not. You have to have it. You are just so vulnerable if you're not running it. Microsoft have got fed up with people not running it, and are actually just they're turning it on. We're not sure why people don't like it, but it's really not that difficult. In most small businesses, once you've set it up, it really doesn't get in your face. And it's the only way of stopping a breach where they've got your credentials. If they've got your username and password and you don't have 2FA, they're away. If they've got 2FA running, with 2FA running, whether it's on 365 or Adobe or any platform that you use, they can't do anything. They can't get in. Important to note that 2FA has changed over the last few years. When it first came out, it used to be just a text message. We recommend not doing that and actually using an app on your phone. The reason being that SIM cards can be cloned. So if you're getting a text message and they know what your mobile number is, and there are ways and means that they can do it, they can get that text message. With an app on your phone, they can't do that. The original ones used to have a push notification, so you'd log into Microsoft 365 and it would go, oh, okay, we're going to do an authentication, and your phone would pop up and it would say approve or deny. Of course, what the spammers and the hackers were doing, they would just send many, many requests to the point that somebody would go, I'm fed up with my phone beeping, and hit approve, at which point they were in. Not good. So what the newer applications do on your phone is the computer that's trying to log in will generate a 2-digit number, and the app will pop up and say, hey, someone's trying to log in as you, enter the 2-digit number shown on the screen. Well, if you can't see the screen, because it's not you, you can't enter the number. So that makes it far more secure. So we really do think that everybody should have 2FA on everything, along with a complex password that's unique to that site.
Yeah. Well, I've seen that on my with the banking from time to time. They've sent me through some kind of access code on the text, and it's appeared on the front screen of my phone before I've even logged in.
Yes. People do forget to turn on the security that says you've got to need to unlock the phone before you can see the messages. So all these different things, just have it in the app. It's got to be properly unlocked with your biometrics, and that's definitely the most secure way of doing it.
Yeah. Grand. So, two-factor authentication. That brings us to the end of that. Next thing is backups.
Backups, okay. So the first 5 things we've talked about are all ways of keeping people out and protecting systems. Backups is about what happens should it go wrong. And it might be that you've been breached, that your controls have failed, but it might be that somebody's left. We do see it sometimes. You'll get a bad leaver, and they know they're leaving, and they've been deleting things in the background for a while. People say, well, that's okay, 365's got a backup. It has, but 30 days. Are you going to know within 30 days that you've lost some files, or some files have been damaged, or whatever? So what we say is, you need to have a backup. Your backup plan needs to know what data you've got, where it is, where you're backing it up to, and most importantly, how you recover it. Because there's no point going, yes, we've got a backup, if you don't know where it is and how to recover it. And that might mean keeping a record of encryption keys. Cloud backups will have encryption keys. They can't access your data. Your data's sitting there on their server, but they don't have access. If you ring them up, or you won't be able to ring them up, you log a support ticket and say, we're trying to restore our data, what's our encryption key? They're going to go, we don't know, it was your job, it's said on the screen, you need to record these encryption keys so you've got them for later. So backups to local is great, backups to the cloud is much better. Things like 365, we wrap a backup around it, and same with Google Workplace. We give 7-year retention, so if you delete a file today, it's recoverable for the next 7 years. And that's sitting in UK data centres doing multiple backups per day, so that we've got client data in a format. We know what it's come, where it's gone, where it's come from, where it's stored, and how we can get it back. And the fact that we can then do test restores and things to show that the data's there.
You raised an interesting point, which is this distinction between keeping data on site and keeping it in the cloud. And I do hear people saying, oh, I don't want my data in the cloud because it's not as secure, and
Indeed.
all of this.
And yeah, the cloud backups, people do worry about it. It's all encrypted. So there's nobody at the other end can access your data. Imagine a warehouse full of hard drives with your data spread across them. They can walk around and look at the hard drives to their heart's content, but all they're going to see is zeros and ones. They're not going to see your data. It's completely secure, as long as you've got those encryption keys secured away.
Yeah, I think that's our 6, isn't it?
That's our 6 essential things. They're all foundations of cyber essentials, but they're all things that every business should be doing.
So those are 6: endpoint protection, operating system and application updates, backups, endpoint detection and response, email protection, two-factor authentication, and I'm going to repeat the one in the middle, which is backups.
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 Can't have too many backups.
Excellent. Tony, thank you so much. That's really enlightening.
Thank you, Jim.
There you go. I think that's really interesting for all of us who run our own businesses, just to keep an eye on these things. And if you want to have a bit of an audit, just to talk it through, Tony, you're available over a coffee.
Give us a call. We're going to have a coffee, and we'll run through what they need to do to protect their business and their data.
Perfect. Contact details are above here. Tony, thanks very much once again for coming in.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. That's it. Bye for now.